Have you ever noticed that true wealth often hides in silence? Not in flashy cars or extravagant lifestyles, but in the way someone quietly observes, decides, and moves through the world. Imagine this. You are in a room where everyone is speaking loudly about their ambitions, their possessions, their plans. And then there is one person, calm, collected, speaking little but observing everything. That person may be the wealthiest in the room, whether financially, intellectually, or in influence. This video is not about money in the shallow sense. It is about discovering the invisible marks of those who have learned to think like the rich, not because they inherited wealth, but because they cultivated a mind trained in clarity, strategy, and resilience. And the fascinating part is that these marks often go unnoticed, even by the people who carry them. We are used to believing that wealth is something visible, brands, houses, power displayed in public. But the richest minds rarely reveal themselves in such obvious ways. Their signs are subtle, almost imperceptible. They live with a kind of quiet strength, a discipline of thought, and a capacity for detachment that most people overlook. And here is the truth. If you have ever felt slightly out of place in conversations driven by appearances, if you prefer to listen rather than to boast, if you carry an inner calm when others panic, these may be marks that your mind already operates differently. You may already be thinking like the rich in silence. The philosopher Niccolo Machiavelli once wrote that those who truly hold power do not need to show it constantly. Their presence is enough. This principle applies not only to politics, but also to the way we live daily life. Influence, strength, and abundance are not necessarily loud. They can be invisible, hidden in the way you carry yourself, in the way you make decisions, and in the way you remain grounded while others chase illusions. So here's the invitation. As we unfold this reflection, I want you to look at yourself honestly. Ask, do I carry some of these invisible marks? Am I living more like the majority, distracted by appearances? Or have I, perhaps unknowingly, been walking a path closer to the mindset of those who are quietly rich in vision, discipline, and depth? Stay with me until the end, because you may discover that wealth is not what you thought, and that you already carry more of it than you imagined. If this resonates with you, share in the comments whether you've ever felt this silent difference in yourself. And of course, like this video and subscribe for more reflections that go beyond appearances. What if wealth was not about what you could show, but about what you could withhold? Imagine a life where your strength is not measured by how loudly you defend your worth, but by how calmly you stand in silence, letting your actions speak for themselves. Picture yourself entering a negotiation, not desperate to be seen as competent, but quietly confident, already knowing that the one who observes with patience always sees more than the one who rushes to speak. Now let us stretch this imagination further. What if the wealthiest people you will ever meet are not those who dominate conversations, but those who know when to remain still, when to retreat, when to let others reveal themselves? There is a hidden power in silence, a form of intelligence that gathers information, perceives patterns, and waits for the right moment to act. It is not flashy, but it is profoundly effective. Consider your own life. How different would your relationships, your work, and even your self-image be if you practice this? If you were less eager to prove yourself, and more willing to observe, to notice, to wait? Think of the energy you would save by not reacting impulsively to every challenge. Think of the clarity you would gain by not being carried away by the noise of others. This mindset is not about being passive. It is about learning to control the battlefield of perception. Machiavelli and the Prince emphasize that appearances are tools, but real power lies in what is hidden, the calculations, the timing, the discipline no one sees. Wealth, in this sense, is not what dazzles the eye, but what strengthens the character. So I ask you, what if you began living with this invisible strategy? Instead of exhausting yourself trying to prove your value to the world, what if you cultivated the discipline of inner wealth, the wealth of clarity, patience, and restraint? The world may not immediately applaud you, but silently, you would be building the same mindset that has allowed the powerful, the resilient, and the truly rich to stand firm throughout history. Take a moment now. Imagine how your life could look in 1 year if you started applying this simple shift. Listening more, reacting less, moving with intention rather than impulse. That picture you just formed is not just fantasy. It is the door opening to a different path. And the truth is, the choice to walk through it is already in your hands. We live in a culture where wealth is often measured by what can be displayed. The car, the house, the vacations. These are the common symbols people use to convince both others and themselves that they are successful. But here is the disruptive truth. The need to display is itself a sign of insecurity, not abundance. True wealth, whether material or intellectual, does not need to shout. It whispers through choices, habits, and presence. Think of the people you know who constantly showcase their possessions, their achievements, their lifestyle. Now compare them to those who live with quiet confidence, who rarely boast but whose decisions reveal a depth of stability. Which of these two groups do you believe will endure longer? Which carries real strength? The paradox is that those who seem the richest are often the most fragile, because their identity depends on appearances. This is where the hidden marks of the wealthy mind emerge. People who think like the rich in silence are not seduced by the need to prove themselves through external symbols. They are willing to appear ordinary because they understand that real influence comes not from the surface, but from strategy. They are not obsessed with looking powerful. They are focused on being effective. Machiavelli observed that rulers who try too hard to please everyone lose their authority. In the same way, individuals who constantly seek validation through possessions or recognition become enslaved by the opinions of others. The richest minds, on the other hand, cultivate independence from these illusions. They know that influence, like respect, cannot be begged for. It must be quietly earned through consistency and strength of character. So here is the disruptive insight. If you feel uncomfortable with the obsession around appearances, if you often prefer to focus on substance rather than show, you are already thinking differently from the crowd. What most people call wealth is only decoration. What the truly rich cultivate is discipline of thought, resilience in adversity, and mastery over impulses. Ask yourself honestly, are my choices driven more by how I will be seen, or by what will genuinely strengthen me? Every time you choose substance over spectacle, you align yourself with the invisible marks of a wealthier mind. And that, in the long run, is what separates those who build something enduring from those who simply perform success for the eyes of others. It is one thing for me to tell you that silent strength is a mark of true wealth, but let us root this idea in history. Niccolo Machiavelli, the often misunderstood Florentine thinker, wrote not for dreamers but for realists. In The Prince, he insisted that true power is never simply in appearances. It lies in the ability to understand human nature and act strategically within it. A ruler, he argued, must not always be virtuous in the way society defines virtue, but must be wise enough to appear virtuous when it serves stability and power. This insight unsettles many because it contradicts our romantic ideals. We are taught that authenticity means always showing who we are, that honesty means transparency in every situation. Yet Machiavelli reminds us that life is a game of perception, and those who master this game gain an advantage that others cannot even see. To think like the rich in his sense is not to deceive constantly, but to know that silence, discretion, and timing are greater assets than raw exposure. Modern psychology echoes this wisdom. Studies in behavioral economics show that individuals with a higher tolerance for delayed gratification, those who can wait, observe, and hold back, are more likely to achieve long-term success. The rich mindset is not only about having resources, but about managing impulses, controlling reactions, and resisting the temptation to waste energy proving oneself unnecessarily. And literature reinforces the same lesson. In The Count of Monte Cristo, Alexandre Dumas gives us a character who rises to power not by announcing his intentions, but by concealing them, acting with patience, and striking only when the moment is right. This archetype resonates because it speaks to a truth we all sense. Strength that is quiet lasts longer than strength that is noisy. So when we say that thinking like the rich leaves invisible marks, we are not speaking of secret bank accounts or hidden assets. We are speaking of a cultivated mind, one shaped by history, philosophy, and lived experience. that values restraint over display, timing over haste, perception over noise. Reflect for a moment. When was the last time you allowed silence to work for you, instead of rushing to fill it? Did you notice how the dynamic changed? How people revealed themselves while you listened? That is the authority Machiavelli wrote about, and it is one of the clearest signs of a wealthy mind at work. There are forces shaping your decisions every day that you rarely notice. Think about conversations where you feel pressured to speak just to avoid silence, or situations at work where the loudest voices seem to dominate, even though their ideas are not the most valuable. These are invisible dynamics, and unless you recognize them, you are trapped by them. Here is the subtle truth. Silence itself is a form of communication. Most people fear it because they believe silence exposes weakness, when in fact it often reveals strength. By holding silence, you create space for others to show their intentions, their insecurities, and their desires. What they reveal in those moments becomes information you can use, while you remain unexposed. This is one of the clearest invisible marks of thinking like the rich. Instead of rushing to prove themselves, these individuals let situations unfold. They know that people betray their deepest motives not through carefully chosen words, but through what spills out when they are not interrupted. In this way, silence becomes a strategy, not a void. You may not realize it, but you already encounter this dynamic daily. Consider how negotiations, friendships, or even family disputes shift depending on who controls the rhythm of the conversation. Those who master restraint create invisible pressure. They appear calm while others grow uncomfortable and overexpose themselves. This is not manipulation, it is discipline. Machiavelli understood this well. He observed that the prince who always speaks openly about his intentions is easily defeated, because enemies can prepare against him. But the ruler who keeps silence, who reveals only what is necessary, creates unpredictability. And unpredictability is a form of power. Now reflect on your own life. How often do you give away too much too quickly? Your thoughts, your plans, your emotions, simply because you fear being misunderstood if you stay quiet. What if instead you began practicing the discipline of measured speech, of listening more than you reveal? Here is the invisible dynamic most people never name. The one who can endure silence controls the interaction. This control is not about dominance but about freedom. The freedom not to be rushed, not to be provoked, not to be enslaved by the noise of others. Recognizing this pattern in yourself is a clear signal that you are already closer to the mindset of the quietly wealthy. Let us pause here and name some truths with sharp clarity. These are not slogans for motivation, but reminders that pierce through the illusions of modern life. Silence is not emptiness, it is strategy. The one who speaks least often knows the most. Wealth is not displayed, it is preserved. Noise is cheap, restraint is expensive. If you must prove yourself, you have already lost. The richest voice in the room is often the quietest. These phrases are more than clever lines. They are mental anchors, cutting through the fog of a culture obsessed with appearances. They remind us that the true markers of wealth are invisible. Patience when others rush, clarity when others scatter, calm when others panic. Machiavelli's realism still shocks us today because it forces us to see what we prefer to ignore. People are moved more by perception than by truth. And if you understand this, you gain power not by deceiving but by mastering yourself. The discipline to stay silent, to reveal less, to time your actions carefully. That is an inheritance more valuable than gold. Think about how often your energy is wasted by explaining yourself, defending yourself, trying to convince others of your worth. Now imagine the wealth of strength you would gain if you stopped doing this. If instead you let your actions, your consistency, and your results speak in silence. Here is the paradox. By saying less, you will ultimately be heard more. By seeking less recognition, you will eventually gain deeper respect. By holding back in the short term, you create the foundation for influence in the long term. So let these lines echo within you. Let them challenge the habits that drain your energy. And the next time you are tempted to react, to prove, to display, remember, silence is not weakness. Silence is a mark that your mind has begun to think like the rich. And when you hold to it, the world around you will begin to notice, even if you never speak a word. Here is a paradox that unsettles most people. The less you need to show, the more you actually have. This runs against everything society teaches us. We are told that success must be visible, that confidence must be loud, that happiness must be shared constantly. Yet the quietest lives often carry the deepest strength. Machiavelli himself lived within this paradox. He wrote truths that few dared to say openly, but he disguised them in a style that appeared to serve rulers, even while revealing the mechanics of power to anyone willing to read carefully. His genius was not only in what he revealed, but in what he concealed. And that is exactly the paradox of the wealthy mind. It builds power by not displaying power. Let us bring this into the everyday. Most people believe that talking more in a meeting proves intelligence. But the paradox is that those who listen more and speak selectively are perceived as wiser. People assume you know more than you say, while the ones who rush to speak reveal their limits. The same applies in relationships. The one who does not chase approval often becomes the one most respected. There is another paradox. To gain control, you must give up the need to control every impression. To gain freedom, you must accept discipline. To influence others, you must first restrain yourself. These contradictions are not weaknesses. They are the secret architecture of strength. This is why thinking like the rich is never about doing what everyone else does. It is about seeing the invisible patterns, the paradoxes that others miss. Where people see silence as absence, you see it as presence. Where they see patience as passivity, you see it as strategy. Where they see restraint as loss, you see it as preservation. So I ask you, are you willing to embrace the paradoxes that the majority reject? Can you accept being misunderstood in the short term in order to build something stronger in the long term? If yes, then you are already walking a different path. You are cultivating a mind that quietly prepares for endurance, not applause. And this, perhaps more than anything else, is the unmistakable mark of someone who has begun to think like the rich in silence. When you begin to think like the rich in silence, the rewards are not immediately visible. They do not arrive in the form of applause, quick victories, or sudden recognition. They arrive quietly, like seeds planted in the soil, unseen for a time but destined to break through. The first reward is freedom. By no longer needing to prove yourself constantly, you free your energy for what truly matters. Imagine how much strength you waste every day explaining, justifying, trying to convince. Silence gives you back that strength, allowing you to direct it toward building rather than defending. The second reward is clarity. When you listen more than you speak, you begin to see patterns that others overlook. People reveal themselves without realizing it. Their fears, their ambitions, their weaknesses. You, meanwhile, remain a mystery, and mystery itself is a form of power. The third reward is resilience. Those who depend on external approval are fragile because they can be shaken the moment recognition is withdrawn. But those who learn to carry their wealth inward, the wealth of patience, strategy, and discipline, cannot be so easily broken. They are not inflated by praise, so they are not deflated by criticism. Machiavelli reminds us that fortune favors those who prepare quietly, not those who chase it recklessly. The world may celebrate the loud for a season, but in the long game it is the silent who endure. The truly rich are those who can build without noise, who can walk forward without the constant need for witnesses. Ask yourself, how different would your life feel if you no longer relied on others to validate your worth? What hidden rewards might begin to appear if you simply trusted the discipline of silence? Imagine the peace of not rushing to react, the strength of not being easily provoked, the satisfaction of knowing that your value does not depend on constant display. These are not small rewards. They reshape the way you live, the way you work, and the way you relate to others. They give you a foundation that cannot be shaken easily. And perhaps most importantly, they prepare you for the kind of influence that is not temporary, but lasting. The kind of influence carried only by those who have learned the art of being rich in silence. Let us now tie together the threads of this reflection with a deeper framework. Beneath all these invisible marks of wealth lies a structure of thought that philosophy, psychology, and history have been whispering for centuries. At its core, this framework is built on three pillars: restraint, perception, and timing. Restraint means mastering your impulses, choosing not to reveal everything, not to react immediately, not to waste energy on noise. Perception means sharpening your awareness of others, listening, observing, and recognizing patterns hidden in plain sight. Timing means knowing when to act and when to wait, striking not from desperation, but from strategy. Machiavelli highlighted these pillars in his analysis of rulers, but they apply to every human life. He insisted that appearances matter, yet he never confused appearances with substance. The wise ruler, he said, is one who knows how to appear when necessary, but who bases decisions on deeper realities. That is exactly what thinking like the rich in silence means, mastering both the visible and the invisible, without being enslaved by either. Modern psychology reinforces this framework. Self-regulation, emotional intelligence, and delayed gratification are consistently linked to long-term success. These are not glamorous skills. They do not make headlines. Yet they separate those who build enduring stability from those who chase quick victories. In other words, they are the invisible architecture of wealth. And literature has always echoed the same truth. From Odysseus in Homer's Odyssey, who wins not by brute force but by patience and cunning, to Shakespeare's characters who often fall because they cannot master silence, storytelling across time has revealed the same law. The mind that knows when to speak and when to remain silent shapes destiny more than the one that shouts. So here is the underlying structure. Wealth is not first financial. It is psychological, moral, and strategic. Money may follow, but the foundation is always character. And character is built in silence through unseen choices, disciplined restraint, and patient preparation. Reflect on your own life through this framework. Where do you already practice restraint? Where do you observe more than you reveal? And where do you still rush, still reveal too much, still act without timing? These questions form the mirror in which you will see whether you are already carrying the invisible marks of a rich mind, or whether you are still letting noise disguise your potential. If you have stayed with me until this moment, it means something inside you already resonates with these truths. Perhaps you have always felt different from the noise around you. Perhaps you have sensed that silence is not weakness but strength, and now you see it more clearly. The invisible marks of wealth are not found in possessions, but in the way you carry yourself, the way you decide, the way you endure. This is not about becoming someone else. It is about recognizing what you may already be living. Small signs of a wealthier mind, the ability to observe while others rush, to remain calm when others panic, to choose substance over spectacle. If these resonate with you, then you are already walking a path closer to the mindset of the quietly rich. But here's the challenge. Will you cultivate it further? Will you dare to live in a way that is less understood by the crowd but more faithful to your deeper strength? Will you resist the urge to constantly display, and instead build in silence, trusting that real wealth grows underground before it ever appears above the surface? Machiavelli believed that fortune bends toward those who prepare quietly. Life rewards those who understand human nature, who practice restraint, who do not waste their energy on appearances. And history proves him right. The loud may rise quickly, but it is the silent who endure. So I invite you to take this reflection into your own daily life. Experiment with silence. In your next conversation, resist the impulse to explain everything. In your next conflict, pause before reacting. In your next decision, ask whether you are choosing for substance or for appearance. Each of these small experiments is a step toward cultivating the invisible marks of a wealthier mind. Now I want to hear from you. Have you ever felt that quiet difference in yourself? That sense of carrying strength without needing to prove it? Share your thoughts in the comments. Let's build a community where silence is not mistaken for weakness, but honored as a deeper form of power. And if this journey spoke to you, support it. Like this video, subscribe to the channel, and share it with someone who needs to hear that true wealth is often invisible. Because together we can spread a different message, one that values character over noise and silence over spectacle.